à agir de manière concertée dans le cadre de l'Union européenne, avec nos partenaires européens, dans le cadre aussi du G7 et des institutions financières internationales, afin d'être collectivement à la hauteur des besoins de l'État ukrainien face à la catastrophe de cette guerre. La guerre en Ukraine entraîne par ailleurs de graves répercussions économiques sur le plan international et fait peser un poids injuste sur les économies les plus vulnérables, notamment à travers la hausse des prix des produits de base essentiels dans les domaines de l'alimentation et de l'énergie. La France est à l'initiative, avec ses partenaires, pour minimiser l'impact de l'agression russe sur ces pays, à travers l'initiative FARM en particulier, endossée par toute l'Union européenne, que nous souhaitons déployer en lien avec l'Union africaine, dans le cadre à la fois du G7 et du G20 et de nos partenariats. Nous travaillons avec l'ensemble de nos partenaires pour apaiser les tensions sur les marchés agricoles mondiaux, renforcer la solidarité vis-à-vis des pays les plus impactés et continuer d'investir dans la production agricole locale. FARM est une réponse internationale que nous avons conçue, voulue avec le président Macky Sall, qui a vocation à répondre à la crise alimentaire qui sera une conséquence directe de la guerre en Ukraine. Je veux également, à l'occasion de cette conférence qui nous réunit à Varsovie, saluer la mobilisation exceptionnelle des voisins européens de l'Ukraine, et parmi eux celui en particulier du peuple polonais, qui a accueilli depuis le 24 février dernier plusieurs millions d'Ukrainiennes et d'Ukrainiens. La Pologne s'est mobilisée à tous les niveaux pour faire face à la détresse, au malheur de ces personnes qui ont été contraintes de quitter l'Ukraine. La solidarité exprimée par la Pologne, la Slovaquie, la Roumanie, la Hongrie, la République tchèque, la Moldavie est exceptionnelle. Et il est juste et normal que nous puissions collectivement les appuyer dans leur effort de solidarité au même titre que l'appui direct que nous apportons à l'Ukraine. J'ajoute que nous devons nous organiser, être prêts à assumer cet effort dans la durée, dans le contexte d'un conflit qui malheureusement risque de se poursuivre et dont nous n'avons pas encore vu toutes les conséquences dramatiques. La détermination et la dignité de la population et des autorités ukrainiennes forcent l'admiration de tous. La France entend leur montrer toute sa solidarité en agissant, en prenant ses engagements aujourd'hui à vos côtés et en le faisant dans la durée. Je vous remercie.
All Colombians, I am honored to participate in this high-level international donor conference convened by the governments of Poland and Sweden in partnership with the European Union, given the horrible genocide that is taking place in Ukraine. We have condemned the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Furthermore, Colombia has voiced its deep concerns over the lack of respect for international humanitarian law by the Russian forces who have forced 5.6 million Ukrainian citizens to leave their country. We are aware of the importance of donors and solidarity conferences in strengthening the involvement of the international community, as well as its invaluable support in the response to humanitarian contexts that transcend national borders. We are more than ready to share our technical experience in the reception and protection of migrants and refugees, thanks to the successful implementation of the temporary protection status for the Venezuelan migrants in the Colombian territory. Additionally, to this, and guided by the principles of co-responsibility, we are donating $200,000 to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to support Ukrainian citizens. I reiterate the need to ensure that every humanitarian crisis in the world receives the differentiated attention it deserves. We must provide humanitarian assistance and afford the affected people the opportunity to fully integrate and contribute to our society. We must all raise our voice against this horrible genocide and provide all the necessary support to the Ukrainian citizens around the world. Thank you very much.
For more than 2 months now, the Ukrainian people have been fighting for their freedom with bravery and perseverance. They deserve our deepest respect and our help too. As members of the European family, we have to stand shoulder to shoulder. As well as military goods, the Netherlands has given 40 million euros worth of humanitarian assistance for the victims of the war in Ukraine. And we will continue to provide other forms of support wherever we can. For example, we will be financing 5 million euros worth of fuel. And the Netherlands is sending 17 ambulances to Ukraine. Those who are responsible for this terrible war must be held accountable. As host country of the International Criminal Court, the Netherlands feels a special obligation to contribute in this respect. So, in close cooperation with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, we are sending a forensic team to help investigate alleged war crimes. Justice, humanity and freedom must prevail. We stand united with Ukraine. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, the senseless military aggression by Russia, which we strongly condemn, has been going on for now 10 long weeks. Thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives or have been injured. Hundreds of thousands of people's lives are at risk. Wartime trauma will leave lasting wounds amongst the millions of forcibly displaced and those who stayed. The material destruction is also unprecedented. My country, Luxembourg, stands in full solidarity with Ukraine through collective response to the humanitarian crisis. I would like to commend the staff of aid organizations for their tireless efforts to deliver aid to those in need. Our primary preoccupation remains the suffering and loss of life due to a continuous breaching of international human rights and humanitarian law. Civilians must be protected. Women and children must be saved from violence. Humanitarian workers should not be a target. Humanitarian corridors must be effective and not politicized. Since the beginning of the war, my country, Luxembourg, has allocated 3 million euros of humanitarian aid to Ukraine and delivered 50 tons of firefighting and medical equipment. Connectivity services to humanitarian has also been provided via our telecommunications platform, emergency.lu. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Luxembourg stands ready to increase its humanitarian contributions with additional 1 million euros with a focus on children's safety and mine action. In addition to our humanitarian aid, Luxembourg has committed a total of 100 million euro to welcome refugees at the national level and supported the Ukrainian army with defense equipment worth 50 million euros. We will continue to cooperate with all our partners to respond to the global impact of the war and in view of the future reconstruction of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine need peace and safety now.
Hello everyone, bonjour à tous. Notre communauté est réunie ici aujourd'hui afin de mobiliser du soutien pour les Ukrainiens réfugiés et pour ceux déplacés à l'intérieur de leur pays. Je veux être bien clair, la guerre injustifiable de Vladimir Poutine a engendré une crise humanitaire. Elle a déchiré les familles, forcé les gens à fuir l'endroit où ils vivaient et détruit des villes dans toute l'Ukraine. Canada will continue to be there for Ukrainians. That's why we've committed $100 million in humanitarian aid that will flow through the UN and other humanitarian organizations. This brings our total humanitarian assistance to $245 million since the start of this year. It builds on the work we're already doing to share military equipment, implement new immigration measures, and provide relief wherever we can. En unissant nos forces, nous agissons en toute solidarité avec l'Ukraine et son peuple.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'd like to thank the governments of Poland and Sweden for bringing us together for this important event. I also acknowledge the President of the European Council and the President of the European Commission. As the scale of the civilian impacts of Russia's aggression becomes apparent, we stand with the people of Ukraine. We are horrified at the deepening humanitarian cost of the conflict and condemn unequivocally ongoing human rights abuses inside Ukraine. The blatant disregard for the impact of war on civilian lives, especially children, is strictly prohibited under international law. More than anything, we would like to see an end to the horrific humanitarian suffering that we are seeing in Ukraine as a result of this illegal invasion. To this end, we repeat our call to President Putin to withdraw Russian troops and end this war immediately. Aotearoa New Zealand is committed to contributing urgently needed humanitarian support for the millions of Ukrainians impacted by this war. To date, New Zealand has provided $7.7 million for humanitarian, human rights and legal assistance. Today I am pledging an additional $2 million towards the humanitarian response. Aotearoa New Zealand will continue to explore options for further assistance in the coming weeks and months. We acknowledge the humanitarian organisations providing life-saving assistance and commend those countries generously hosting so many displaced Ukrainians. Our thoughts continue to be with the Ukrainian people. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you, Sweden and Poland, for hosting this important event. During my recent visit to Kiev, I saw the massive destruction and human suffering, meaningless and heartbreaking. Denmark stands behind Ukraine in these dark times. I told President Zelensky that Denmark will contribute another $22 million to the humanitarian needs. This makes our total humanitarian macro-financial aid to almost $100 million. In addition, Danish citizens and companies have contributed massively. Denmark will now help with shelter for Ukrainians who are internally displaced and those who return to Ukraine. We will also help protect women and girls, including survivors of gender-based violence, and help with food supplies. Let there be no doubt, Denmark will continue to support Ukraine in all possible ways, now and in the future. The courage of the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom is an inspiration to us all. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, Russia is fighting the war in Ukraine because it does not want freedom and democracy to prevail. There is no way we can let aggression pay off. Ukraine must win this war. Until Ukraine hasn't won, we haven't done enough. Military aid plays a huge role. So does humanitarian aid. In Estonia, we see that the more we help, the more Estonian people want to help. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Estonia will be pledging an additional €2.9 million in humanitarian and reconstruction phase funding for Ukraine. Counting our companies and NGOs, this takes Estonia's humanitarian aid to Ukraine to 18 million. We also need to turn our focus ahead to Ukraine's reconstruction. Europe must take a leading role in building an even stronger Ukraine. The aggressor must also pay for every bridge, for every house, and for every bullet. This is why I have proposed to set up an escrow account for Russian energy payments. Part of this money would fund reconstruction efforts with revenues from energy supply. Thank you to Poland and Sweden for hosting this crucial and timely conference. Together we are strong. Together we will help Ukraine win.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to thank Poland, Sweden and the European Union for their leadership in convening today's conference. Liechtenstein condemns the Russian aggression against Ukraine in the strongest terms possible. To alleviate the suffering caused by the Russian aggression, our Parliament has increased the budget for Liechtenstein's international humanitarian cooperation and development by 7.5%. This means an additional 1.8 million Swiss francs dedicated for the Ukraine crisis. I also wish to highlight the immense solidarity of Liechtenstein's civil society and the private sector for the people of Ukraine. Liechtenstein supported referring the situation in Ukraine to the International Criminal Court and welcomes the opening of an investigation. Today, we pledge 400,000 Swiss francs to support international and civil society organizations that help document the atrocities committed in Ukraine. With this amount, we not only seek to strengthen the capacity of justice actors, but also the dignity of survivors. I thank you.
On behalf of Norway, we admire the resilience and resistance of the Ukrainian people. Norway stands by Ukraine. We also stand by the United Nations in their efforts to alleviate the suffering of the people of Ukraine. We must continue to support the UN, their international and Ukrainian partners, to enable delivery of life-saving humanitarian aid and protection. Early on, Norway disbursed 68 million euros to the UN appeals. In total, we have allocated 200 million euros in humanitarian aid to Ukraine and neighboring countries. With the European Union, Norway offers medicines and medical assistance. Also, we fully finance a medical evacuation plane transferring Ukrainian patients to hospitals across Europe. To help the Ukrainian government to continue to provide critical services, we have disbursed another 20 million euros in budget support via the World Bank. Norway stands ready to continue our strong support to the people of Ukraine by receiving those who reach all the way to Norway, harboring them during this painful conflict, and by supporting the brave government and people of Ukraine who are back there in their fight for freedom and independence.
Today is day 71 of the war in Ukraine, and every day that passes since Russia attacked Ukraine, every atrocity committed by Russian soldiers only strengthens our resolve and our unity. We are determined. Putin must not win this war, and he will not win it. Because we stand together in sanctioning Russia, in strengthening our defense, and in our solidarity with the Ukrainian people. For years, Germany has been the second largest financial supporter of Ukraine. Since Russia attacked Ukraine, we have increased our efforts. A month ago, I pledged 425 million euro in humanitarian and development aid plus 70 million euro for medical supplies through the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. We have also provided an additional 430 million euro to alleviate the catastrophic effects that the Russian war is having on global food security. Today, we pledge an additional 125 million euro for humanitarian assistance and measures to help increase Ukraine's resilience against Russia's aggression. Second, we will provide urgently needed liquidity for Ukraine's budget. A special loan of 150 million euro has just been disbursed. Another loan of 150 million euro is under fast-track preparation. Third, through our bilateral development cooperation, Germany has so far provided 120 million euro to address the economic and social challenges of the war, and we intend to allocate another 140 million euro in development funding. Fourth, we continue to mobilize the private sector to support Ukraine. One example is our pharmaceutical industry, which is donating urgently needed medicines to Ukraine. Donations from the German pharmaceutical and medical device industry add up to an amount of around 100 million euro. And finally, we are doing what we can to restore respect for humanitarian law and to hold war criminals accountable. Therefore, we are strengthening protection programs for human rights defenders, as well as international criminal jurisdiction and accountability mechanisms. So, thank you, Prime Minister Morawiecki and Prime Minister Andersson, for this opportunity to strengthen our unity and to show once more our full solidarity with Ukraine.
Dear Mateusz, dear Magdalena, distinguished guests, colleagues, the situation in Ukraine is a humanitarian crisis. The impact of the ongoing active warfare is both shocking and distressing. I understand that as things stand right now, more than 12 million Ukrainians require urgent humanitarian assistance. Collectively, we must scale up our collective response and our efforts. And although hundreds of millions of euro have already been donated, we can and must do more. Malta stands alongside the international community in support of Ukraine and its people. And thus, I confirm Malta's intention to make a financial pledge in response to the substantial increase in Ukraine's needs, as we continue offering medical supplies to support operations on the ground. We will spare no expense to address this humanitarian emergency taking place in Europe. The Ukrainian people have shown incredible resilience. They deserve our support, solidarity, and respect. And that is why we are here, to give all this to them. It is by working together in a spirit of continued cooperation that we can address Ukraine's needs in the short, medium, and long term. Thank you.
Dear Mateusz, dear Magdalena, I would like to thank you for organizing this conference. The brutal invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation is an unacceptable act of war in the 21st century. The consequences of this aggression extend far beyond the Ukrainian territory, with millions of refugees seeking safety all over our continent. Portugal is no exception, and we are proud of it. Despite being the westernmost country of Europe and the furthest from Ukraine, has already received 35,000 Ukrainian refugees. To these people, we reaffirm our strongest commitment to ensure their security and well-being. However, we are all aware that the most difficult situation is the one faced by those who remain in Ukraine, where the humanitarian situation is in many cases very, very critical. Therefore, Portugal is ready to pledge a financial contribution of 1 million euros to the United Nations humanitarian response and an additional 1.1 million euros in humanitarian aid to Ukraine in the total package of 2.1 million euros. Portugal stands for Ukraine, and I wish all the success for this initiative.
Prime Ministers, Presidents, thank you for bringing us together. Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss regret that they cannot join you due to the elections in the United Kingdom today. Since the Russian invasion began, the people of Ukraine have demonstrated extraordinary courage. Poland and its neighbouring countries have also shown commendable generosity to those fleeing the conflict. As one of the largest humanitarian donors, the UK has just announced further allocations of our £220 million package of life-saving aid to Ukraine and the region. This includes a further £15 million to the UN Ukraine Humanitarian Fund, supporting emergency healthcare, shelter and sanitation. This will also help tackle sexual and gender-based violence, including through legal support and emergency accommodation for vulnerable women and girls. We will continue to stand in solidarity with our Ukrainian friends and to work with our partners here today to support them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Israel supports the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. We condemn the Russian invasion. There is no justification for it, and we call on Russia to stop the attacks and to resolve the issues around the negotiating table. We cannot remain indifferent to the suffering of Ukrainian citizens. As early as the first days of the war, the State of Israel organized, in accordance with the needs defined by the health and civil authorities of Ukraine, an airlift carrying 100 tons of equipment. We supplied the Ukrainian government with mega generators to ensure a regular supply of electricity for Ukrainian hospitals. We take special pride in the deployment of a civilian field hospital in western Ukraine. The hospital was operative for approximately 6 weeks, and its 250 rotating staff treated some 6,000 patients on a budget of approximately $9 million. As we speak, hundreds of Israeli mental health specialists are giving online workshops to professionals in Ukraine, as well as in the refugee centers outside Ukraine, trying to help relieve the suffering from traumas they have endured. On behalf of the Foreign Ministry of Israel, I express hope that this conflict will be resolved soon and that the war will not develop any further. We all pray for the safety and security of the citizens of Ukraine.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for the chance to address this conference and for the urgency you are bringing to address the searing humanitarian catastrophe unleashed by President Putin's brutal war on Ukraine. A year ago, we were all already dealing with a dramatic rise in humanitarian needs around the world, and that was before Putin sparked the fastest exodus of refugees in Europe since World War II, before he rained down bombs and artillery fire on innocents in Mariupol and Kharkiv, before his belligerence led to skyrocketing energy, food, and fertilizer prices, while putting millions of metric tons of wheat off the global food market. His actions have had unthinkable ramifications. We must now pull together the resources that we never thought we'd have to commit, first to deal with the immediate humanitarian consequences, then to assist in the resilience and recovery of our partners in Ukraine. Today, I'm pleased to announce nearly $387 million in additional U.S. humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, bringing the total amount of humanitarian assistance we've provided since the war began to nearly $690 million. This is money that our partners will use to rapidly distribute food and cash to people in war-torn areas, to help them access safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene kits, and critical medical supplies. The U.S. will continue to stand with the people of Ukraine. The fight they face is the fight for values we all share: self-determination, freedom, and a respect for human dignity. I'm grateful to you for your engagement and for all the historic steps, once unthinkable, that you are taking to support the people of Ukraine. Thank you very much.
I'm grateful to Prime Minister Morawiecki for his invitation to join this important event today, and I'm so sorry that I cannot be there in person due to prior commitments. Given the unfolding human tragedy in Ukraine, all of us in the international community, government, businesses, and citizens have a deep responsibility to come together to aid the Ukrainian people in their time of need. Today, IBM is pledging another $1 million in grants, assistance, and free access to services so that governments, businesses, and NGOs can sustain the humanitarian response. IBM technology is also being deployed to assist those fleeing the war. An AI-powered virtual assistant called e-Consul has launched in the Czech Republic with the support of the Ukrainian embassy. This user-friendly chatbot will help refugees find information on resources, visas, registration, employment, travel, and more. Hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, attention will turn to rebuilding Ukraine. We are already thinking about how IBM can assist in a digital-led recovery plan, bringing our most advanced global technologies. I wish you well in your discussion today, and please be assured IBM's enduring commitment to the people in Ukraine and our firm hope that peace can be restored.
The war in Ukraine has caused a humanitarian catastrophe. Millions of people, mostly women and children, have left the country to seek refuge in the European Union. Those who stay faced the risk of poverty, hunger, and death. We must help Ukraine. Italy has already allocated around 500 million euros to support Ukrainian refugees in our country. I am pleased to announce we have just increased that amount to more than 800 million euros. We have transferred 110 million to support the Ukrainian general budget and are planning to lend up to 200 million euros more. We've given 26 million to international organizations such as the Red Cross, UNICEF, and the UNHCR. We are donating humanitarian and medical goods, including ambulances, tents, medicines, but Ukraine deserves all the support we can give. Italy will continue to do its part.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine has unleashed a security crisis, an energy and food crisis, but above all, an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. What is happening is not only a war in Ukraine or a regional humanitarian crisis. The whole of Europe is affected, and therefore the whole of Europe is responding in solidarity. Unity is our main strength to build together a future of peace, stability and prosperity. I would like to thank the governments of Poland and Sweden for hosting this very important conference, and I would like also to recognize neighboring countries and their societies for their incredible demonstration of solidarity towards Ukrainian refugees. Spain is with you. We have launched the largest humanitarian aid package in our history, dedicating 31 million euros to finance international aid appeals, including 23 million euros for Ukraine and 8 million euros for host countries. We are paying special attention to women, children who are particularly exposed to the war. And we have also put our emergency medical team on active standby mode, ready to be deployed when requested. We must fight against impunity. Spain will support investigations to ensure that the most serious crimes committed in Ukraine will be prosecuted and punished in accordance with international law. And together, united, we are stronger. Reason, freedom, and democracy will prevail against barbarism. Thank you very much.